Abortion. It's a tricky topic, and it's also an unquestioned right in the U.S. Constitution. And any knuckle-dragging Republican who says otherwise is going to pay a price, as the mobs forming outside the homes of Supreme Court justices now suggest. At least, that's the big Democrat media spin. But, is it right? Well, let's find out as we go, busting the narrative. Now first, let's pause to consider the left's, how do I say this politely, elastic relationship with human rights. Now, they are happy on the one hand for illegal migrants to cross borders willy-nilly, but during the pandemic, they wanted everyone else locked up in their homes. They say they believe in free speech, but it really is on their own terms. They believe in lefty revolutionary nonsense, getting a fair hearing and a platform anywhere they can, but they also say that Donald Trump's tweets are violence. Spare us. But it's their assumed right to abort an unwanted pregnancy that is on the flimsiest grounds. Now, last week, someone from inside the Supreme Court leaked a draft that said the court was going to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision that tortured the U.S. Constitution into giving a federal guarantee of abortion rights rather than leaving the matter to the states, as it is done in many other countries, including Australia. Now, this news, this leak, sparked protests that were not only angry and violent, but also illegal. And they were really quite ironic, given that they came from the same side of politics that for years told us Donald Trump was violating norms. They now said that, well, it's okay to attack another norm, the sanctity of the Supreme Court, if it's about getting your way. But back to the protests. Federal law says that attempting to influence any judge by holding pickets or parades in or near a building of residence occupied by such judge can lead to a fine, up to a year in jail, or both. And yet, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, yes, her again, was asked if the president disapproved of these protests. Not, to be clear, protests about the decision or abortion rights, but protests in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices. Yet, instead of answering the question, she simply said right-wingers shouldn't complain because they are guilty of the same crime. Have a look.
Does the president feel that the demonstrations outside of, say, Justice Alito's home are those attempts to interfere or intimidate?
Well, I think I said yesterday, but I'm happy to repeat because I think it's important for everybody to hear, that the president's long-standing view has been that violence, threats, and intimidation of any kind have no place in political discourse. And we believe, of course, in peaceful protests. What I do find is interesting, and I think many people have noted, is that there are voices on the right who have called out this protests that are happening while remaining silent for years on protests that have happened outside of the homes of school board members, the Michigan Secretary of State, or including threats made to women seeking reproductive health care.
Of course, those protests might also be unacceptable, but they are not, according to the law, illegal. Yet Psaki is being, no surprise here, disingenuous, because in contrast to the leftist rabble threatening violence outside justices' homes, pro-life marches are almost always peaceful affairs that reflect conservatives' respect and sanctity for human life. Here's a scene from this year's March for Life, which has been held every year in Washington since 1974. Now, despite the contrast between the sides of these various protests, the media insists that unrestricted abortion enjoys majority support in the electorate.
Where do most Americans stand on what the Supreme Court seems to be poised to do here, overturn Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, Jake, this poll conducted by SSRS was taken entirely after that draft opinion was made public by Politico, and we found opinion hasn't moved that much. It's still a 2-to-1 electorate here in favor of keeping Roe as law of the land. 66% say no, they don't support the Supreme Court overturning Roe. 34% say they do.
Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer made no doubt about which side he was on in Congress last week.
There's only one way to describe the Supreme Court's reported decision to overturn Roe v. Wade: an abomination. Such a decision, if it comes to pass, would be an utter abomination. Women across America would suffer irreparable harm to their rights, their health, and their dignity. It would go down as one of the worst and most damaging opinions that the court has handed down in modern history, and the court would suffer a mortal blow to its reputation that I fear will last forever.
But watch this interview with fellow Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren as she cites statistics that support abortion rights to a British Sky News reporter, only to be shouted down by a pro-life activist who reminds her what this is also about.
69% of people across this country, red states and blue states, old people and young people, want Roe versus Wade to maintain.
We don't want to dismember children in the womb, ma'am. We are not going to stand for dismembering 3,000 children in the womb every single day. And anybody, I don't care what type of leader you are, the fact that you as a leader would stand for the dismemberment.
Speaks for itself. And also, the statistics Senator Warren and every other pro-choice politician spouts don't bear scrutiny. As U.S. conservative commentator Ben Shapiro pointed out this week, 66% of the public think that if Roe is overturned, abortion immediately becomes illegal everywhere in the United States. So when you hear Democrats say that the majority of the public don't want Roe overturned, what they mean is the vast majority of the public does not want abortion to be made illegal all the way across the country. Correct. In other words, most of the people who oppose the overturning of Roe v. Wade are not like the protesters outside the Supreme Court justices' homes in Washington threatening violence if they don't get their own way. Rather, they are people who are mostly uncomfortable with the issue, but who also reluctantly believe it should remain legal as long as they're performed within the first 10 weeks or the first trimester of pregnancy. But beyond that, this is a political debate that transcends mere polling of voters. It asks people to grapple with enormous questions about the value and sanctity of life. Fact is, any person wading into this debate, and I have no doubt that it is an emotional one, should bring with them the wisdom of Solomon and the compassion of a saint. Yet, instead of that serious gravity, we get things like this from comedian Lori Kilmartin commenting about the anonymous person who leaked the draft decision of the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade.
My feeling about the leaker, I would like to find out who the leaker is so I could make sweet love to that person, because that person is a hero to me. Okay? And if the leaker, a lot of people are saying it could be a conservative, if the leaker is a Republican, and if I get pregnant during our lovemaking, I will joyfully abort our fetus and let them know.
Seriously, what do you say about that? And here's Chuck Schumer again, coming down on what he thinks is the right side of history, or should I say, histrionics.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
The truth is that this is the only hill left for Democrats to defend. Joe Biden's catastrophic presidency has reduced their prospects to this one ghastly, miserable issue, whether or not to kill unborn babies. And if this is the hill they want to die on, it would be a fitting symbol of the stance that they are taking. I'm James Morrow. Thanks for watching. And to support this channel, please like, share, and subscribe below. And I'll see you next week for more Busting the Narrative.